So this is just kind of an introduction to expungement, and what we're going to talk about. Well, yeah, first let's do the introduction. Steve mentioned the names of the folks that are here. I'll let everybody say hello in just a second. Steve already introduced us as an organization, and then he's the Director of Community Engagement. I'm Noah Joseph. I'm the pro bono supervising attorney. And Hannah Scruton is here from the St. Joe office, and she and I are going to be leading this training. And then Greg Geis has also joined us from the Kalamazoo office. He's the expungement paralegal, and he serves the kind of southern half of our 17 counties. So that's who's here from legal aid. And then I wanted you folks to introduce yourselves as well. So I kind of put this out just to know a little bit more about who's here. We will do this as well. So obviously we don't have a role at Whirlpool, but we want to kind of get to know you and have you get to know us. So I'll just start off. My name's Noah Joseph, as I said, and I told you what my role is. Familiarity with expungement. I think this is something good for you to know as well from our end. When I joined legal aid less than a year and a half ago, one of my roles is to expand clinical opportunities for attorneys in our service area. And as I talked to people at other organizations, I quickly found out that expungement is quite often the first area that people get into when it comes to expungement or clinics. So I kind of started hearing about that. And then at the same time, Michigan passed this great new law. And since then, just the demand, the interest from clients, from organizations, the interest in expungement has grown. And so I feel like I've become somewhat of an expert in expungement, and I've led trainings like this. But prior to coming to legal aid, I didn't really have much experience with expungement. So I've kind of learned a lot in the last year. So that's kind of my familiarity. And one interesting fact about myself is that I have visited every continent except Antarctica, and I don't really count that as a continent, and I don't plan to go there. So let's see, Steve, if Steve's still here, I'll have him kind of go through this next as well.
Hey, yes. No, I'm wondering if, yep. We're still seeing your title slide. Are you showing a different slide?
I am. There we go. There we go. All right. Thank you.
Okay, this is Steve. So you met me just a minute ago. As Noah said, I'm the Director for Community Engagement, and what that means basically is I help run our pro bono program and then do a lot of work with our volunteer lawyers at some of the law firms, and now with Whirlpool too, just to make sure that you're getting the most out of your volunteer work that you can get, both as professionals and people. Familiarity with expungement, I am not a Michigan attorney, I'm a Pennsylvania attorney. And I did a couple of expungements way back when Pennsylvania became a clean slate state itself, which preceded Michigan a little bit. But I'm learning a lot as I'm going here in terms of how this legislative package works. And what Noah said before is absolutely right. You can become an expert on this and get super comfortable with it in pretty short order. And Noah and Hannah and Charles will be terrific guides for that. An interesting fact about myself, I just had to disclose in a state bar meeting that I once got mistaken for the actor Jim Caviezel. This was back when he was in a movie, I think, called The Passion of the Christ, and I guess we had the same haircut. And the trouble is that I'm about 5'9" with shoes on, and I think Jim Caviezel's a lot taller. So when I jumped off the bar stool after this probably inebriated person thought I was Jim Caviezel, I caused a lot of confusion. And then I had to sign my name as Caviezel. And when you don't know how to spell Caviezel, you get into a lot of trouble then. So I barely got out of that, hanging on to my identity as Jim Caviezel. And with that, how about I see, Hannah happens to be up next on my screen.
Sure, thanks, Steve. I'm Hannah Scruton. I'm a staff attorney with Legal Aid, and I'm here in our St. Joe office, which I like to say is small but mighty. There are about 6 total employees here and 3 attorneys. So we are proud, but like I said, we are the smallest office. In terms of familiarity with expungement, I've been working on expungement since I was in law school. I was in law school in Illinois and worked on some there. And then I've been working on them since I came to Legal Aid. And as we'll get into a little bit, the law changed in April. So we're really working on a law that's only been around for about, 6 months that it's been in effect. So in a sense, no one's an expert, and there are a lot of experts at the same time because, no one has been working on this longer than 6 months. So that makes it easy to jump in. And expungements are really one of my favorite things to do. I do a lot of family law, so it's a nice break. There's no one arguing, and it's really rewarding. People are always really happy for your help, and it's a really positive day for people. So it's one of my favorite things to do. And one interesting fact, I'm originally from a small town in Tennessee that makes St. Joe look like a big city. So that's that. All right, and I guess I'll send it to Charles next since we're starting with legal aid people.
Yes, good afternoon. Charles, as they mentioned, I am in the Kalamazoo office, but my service area includes Berrien County, so I'm pleased to meet all of you today. I actually just joined Legal Aid as part of the expungement program in June of this year, and I spent most of my previous semi-legal paralegal career in the patent world. So rather a change of pace for me, but I'm excited to be part of this. And I got an interesting fact. As it turned out, many of the patent attorneys I worked with were telling each other that I had a degree in English because they thought it was far away from their experience. And I have now learned that many of the people at Legal Aid think I have a degree in engineering, neither of which is true. My background is in social sciences. So.
Thanks, Charles. Katie, you want to go next?
Sure. My name is Katie. I am on the commercial law team at Whirlpool, so I do primarily trademark and marketing law, advertising law. I have participated in one expungement fair, so a little exposure to expungement, but certainly not an expert. I have an interesting fact about myself. I have always been a trademark and marketing lawyer, but I have only argued in court one time, and it was an immigration case. So.
And then if you just want to pass it on to someone else at Whirlpool.
That's a lot of pressure. Do you want to call on us on the order on your screen? I feel like the last person's going to be like, who hasn't gone next?
Okay. How about Emily?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Emily. I'm in the disputes team within the Whirlpool Law Department. So we handle products liability, class action, all types of litigation. Like Katie, I participated in the expungement fair that was held recently in Kalamazoo and thought this was a really impactful way for volunteers at Whirlpool to get involved and assist the legal aid office and make a difference in some folks' lives. So we're really excited to be a part of this. An interesting fact about me, some of you may have heard this before, but in high school, I sang in show choir, and we would go around and compete at the show choir festivals and everything. And on the show choir with me was this young kid named Johnny Stevens, who eventually became the Grammy award-winning R&B artist, John Legend. So you may have heard of him, and we sang in show choir together way back when.
Cool, thank you. How about LaShonda?
Wow, I have to go behind that. John Legend, goodness. I'm LaShonda Armstrong. I'm in the disputes team. I handle property damage claims. I don't have any experience with expungement, so I'm excited to be here. And one interesting fact about me that I was born at home. My mother did not make it to the hospital, so I was born. She said I was wide awake and looking around. So,
Well, thank you. Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm also on the disputes team doing property damage claims. I don't have any familiarity with expungement, so I'm very excited to learn more about it. An interesting fact about me, I'm also a trained massage therapist, so I don't know how interesting that is, but
Well, thank you. That's interesting. And I meant to say at the beginning, I expected that most of you would say that you don't have a lot of familiarity with expungement. So that's why we're here. All right. How about Ashley?
Sorry about that. Hi, my name's Ashley. I work for the global compliance team at Whirlpool. I've worked with expungements in Maryland. I've actually participated in a couple expungement fairs here where I live. One interesting fact about myself is I was an extra on the show House of Cards, but I've never seen the episode that I was in.
What season was it in?
It was in the 4th season.
Oh, okay. I never got there.
Yeah, I've never watched the show, but one day it's on my bucket list.
Yeah. Ava.
Sure. It's Ava, and
Ava.
I am.
Sorry.
Oh, no worries. It's if you got it right, that would be amazing. I'm the chief legal officer at Whirlpool, and I was very excited when I got this invitation from Katie to participate in this. I moved to Whirlpool from a company in Ohio, and actually at that company, we had an ongoing effort among the legal group to do expungements and to assist on expungements. So we've done, and I've done quite a few. And in fact, I had a global team of about 40 people come in and help with this all-day expungement effort. And it was probably one of the most amazing experiences because people from all over the world, we teamed them up with local lawyers, could really see a different part of our culture and how important it is to serve your community. So I think this is just a great effort, and thank you for all of you that do this as part of your commitment. And then interesting fact about myself, interesting is pretty subjective. I think a lot of people already know this on the call, so I'll just share it again. I was in an 80s rock band in the 80s. And I don't think anyone I sang with or played with got any awards. And so I think, Emily, that was an amazing story.
Thank you. I won't ask you to sing. We've had enough singing and dancing, I think.
Play keyboards. You don't want.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. How about Linda?
Hi, I'm Linda Hokinson. I'm a discovery specialist on the disputes team. I also do not have very much familiarity with expungement or the laws around it. Interesting fact, I've been to the majority of the states in the US. However, a lot of my travel, or most of my travel, was in my younger years. So not sure all of it counts, and some of it I can't remember.
It still counts. Thank you. How about Paula?
Okay, I'm having trouble with my camera. There it is. Okay. Hi, I'm Paula Haynes. I work on the discovery team in disputes, and I also work in information management. A little familiarity with expungement, and the interesting fact about myself, I was a court reporter for 12 years, and 3 of those years were in Europe. So.
Cool. Thank you. And then Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Zakreski. I'm also on the disputes team working with discovery. I don't have any familiarity with expungement, so I am looking forward to this opportunity to help. It's really hard to think of any interesting facts about myself. I was born and raised here in St. Joe, and I never left. And I don't plan on leaving. Really enjoy it here.
Great. I think that is everybody. Is there anybody that has not gone? Did I miss anyone?
Not that
All
I had
right.
anything interesting to share. So I was up there. I was a late ad, so maybe I didn't show up right away. Can you guys hear me?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Alyssa.
Sorry. Hi, Alyssa Pulaski. I'm a paralegal on the marketing law team, and I'm not familiar with expungement. So excited to learn more and help. And then my one interesting fact that I was thinking about is I'm planning a vacation here soon where I'll be on a sailboat sailing with 3 other people by ourselves. So I'm kind of excited about that.
Where are you going to be sailing?
In the Bahamas.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. Sorry I missed you. I think I'm hoping, as the initial slide said, this is the start of a partnership, and I think we all hope that it grows from starting with some expungement. We'd love to work with you folks on other types of cases and things like that. So, but it's always good to just start kind of with one thing, and and so that's where we are today. Let's see if I can. Okay. So, just wanted to give you a quick overview of what we're going to talk about today. As I had talked with Katie earlier about kind of how best to do this training and how best to set this up. Today is just the first introduction. So we'll talk about a little bit about expungement. What is it? Steve already kind of mentioned. Basically, it's clearing your record. You know, there are so many things that are on people's records, and if we can help them get that cleared, can make a big deal in their life. So why is it important? I'll talk a little bit about that. So this is just kind of an introduction of all that we're going to talk about today. What we are, we already kind of explained legal aid, but what do we do in the process? And then how can you help? And then what comes next is, once today's training is done, what happens? So we're going to talk at the end about setting up another training. For a few weeks out, we can work on scheduling that, but that training we're hoping to do in person. And by then, we hope to have some files ready to bring and kind of walk through them with you so you can see all the different parts. So today is just kind of the basic introduction. You know, we're going to go through the law, you know, all that kind of information, which is important, but it's, you know, it's a little dry. And so hopefully we're trying to, you know, keep this on the shorter side. This training is being recorded, and it will also send you out materials after this, so you can kind of have this information at your disposal later on as you're helping clients and going through the cases. But we just wanted to give the background both of the law itself and how that works here in Michigan, and then how cases come through legal aid, how you'll be able to help, and the process specifically in Berrien County, because you know, one of the unique things about Michigan, the legal system in Michigan, is that we don't have a unified court system, and so every court does their own thing pretty much all the time. So what they do in Berrien County is totally different from the way they handle expungement in Kent County, which, I mean, in Kent County, they're all over the place with how they're handling expungements as well. So we'll kind of talk through all that. Please stop us at any time. We'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. I scheduled an hour and a half. I don't expect that we'll need that unless you guys just have lots and lots of questions, which would be great. So while there is time at the end, please stop us. I think it's better to, you know, if you have a question about something, either just unmute yourself and ask it. There are not a lot of people here, so I'm not worried about that. You can put something in the chat as well, whatever's easiest for you. But just stop us if there's anything you're unsure about. So first, I just wanted to talk a little bit about why there is this focus on expungement. And one of the interesting things is expungement is at least as it got passed through Michigan, is extremely, it's a bipartisan issue. It had support on both sides of the aisle, and is just something that has wide support throughout the legal community. And I think there are two big reasons for that. One is just the impact it can have on people's lives. So employment, housing, I did have some numbers that there was a study done which helped lead to the new law. It was a study out of the University of Michigan where they looked at expungements. You know, expungements have been available. They've just been much more limited in the past. So there is some data on people that do get expungements and the impact that they have, or that expungement has on them. So the biggest change that people see is in the first year after an expungement. The probability that someone is employed raises by 6.5%. And then over that same period, the average wages that someone has rose by 22%. So not only are people able to get to are more likely to have a job, they're more likely to get paid more. So that's just a huge impact that this one thing, you know, in this study, you know, ruled out other factors. So these numbers are specific just to the expungement. And then the second reason that I think it has broad support is, you know, I think a lot of people's initial reaction is, well, you know, these people have committed crimes, they're probably going to commit more crimes. Well, the studies show that there's really low recidivism. So, you know, we'll talk about this more, but a big part of the new law is waiting periods. So you have to wait a certain amount of time before you can expunge your record. And that's based on the data. And so the data says that fewer than 4% of set-aside recipients were rearrested within 5 years, and fewer than 2% were reconvicted. That's an extremely low rate, and that's actually lower than the overall average. So what that means is someone who has received an expungement is less likely to commit a crime than the average person. So, you know, there are these huge impacts, positive. The risk is low, and basically people talk a lot about how, you know, you have to you know, serve your time or pay your debt to society or whatever. And everybody that's applying for an expungement has. They've paid their fees, their fines, their costs. They've served their time, and they're still paying for it 5, 10, 20, 30 years down the road for something that, you know, they did so long ago and have done nothing since. But it can still be, you know, a big hindrance to their employment prospects and their housing. You know, a lot of our clients are people that receive some sort of subsidized housing, and they can just be absolutely barred from any sort of subsidized housing if they have, you know, convictions on their record. So it can really have a huge impact. And as Steve said, it's not difficult. I mean, it's really, as legal processes go, it's an extremely simple process. The difficulty is in determining who's eligible and who's not, which we'll get into shortly. So as I move to the next slide, we're going to switch over to Hannah.
All right. Okay. So as we've talked about, the new law that went into effect was referred to as the Clean Slate Law. I actually just moved here about a year ago, and so I never practiced under the old law, so can't speak too much to that. But I can tell you that a couple of the major ways that it changed what the law previously was. For one, it set up some procedures for some convictions to be automatically expunged without having to file an application. However, I believe it's not going to be until 2023 that we actually start to see that. So in the meantime, we do need to actually file the application in order for people to get their records expunged. It added a lot of marijuana convictions to be eligible that previously weren't. And it expanded other eligible convictions. So some things that weren't eligible previously are now. Also increased the number of convictions. Before, I believe it was 1 felony and 3 misdemeanors or something like that. And now you are eligible for 3 felonies and unlimited misdemeanors. However, I believe they did increase the waiting period, so they've kind of shifted the focus to it takes a longer time to get an expungement, but the number of eligible convictions are way expanded. And so this has led to a huge amount of people who were not previously eligible that are now. So we have a ton of cases to work on, to say the least. So it's a great time for you all to be getting involved in this. All right, so to get into a little bit of what can be expunged now under the new law. Most misdemeanors and serious misdemeanors are eligible, and there's an unlimited number that can be expunged. You're not limited to only 3 like you were previously. For felonies, there is still a limit. Only 3 felonies can be expunged in a person's lifetime, and some traffic offenses can be expunged now also. All right, and so it's actually kind of easier and simpler to say what cannot be expunged. So life offenses, even if a person wasn't sentenced to life, if it is a charge that carries a maximum sentence of life in prison, that is not eligible to be expunged. Criminal sexual conduct in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd degree, as well as some other sex crimes, is not eligible. Criminal sexual conduct in the 4th degree is only eligible if it happened after January 15th of 2015. And a felony for domestic violence if the individual has a prior misdemeanor conviction for the same offense is not eligible. And some traffic offenses, so any offense causing injury or death, or any offense occurring while operating a CDL. And just something to note when you're looking at these records, a lot of times what someone is charged with is not what they end up being convicted of. So for example, something I see a lot is someone was charged with assault, but then pled it down to disturbing the peace. And so I think I've seen most of the time they would all be eligible, but it's just important to know you want to look at the conviction. So if they were charged with something that's not eligible, if they ended up being convicted of something that is, then ultimately they are eligible. But sometimes judges will ask about that when you're at the hearing. So it's good to look at both of those. And we'll get into it a little bit later, but you're going to see something called an ICHAT that shows an arrest record as well as a judicial record, as well as the certified conviction. So that way you have the full background, but what they were actually convicted of is what we're focusing on in terms of whether they're eligible or not for expungement. Okay. So a couple more things. If we've determined that the actual conviction is eligible, then we have to determine whether it's been long enough. So for most misdemeanors, it's 3 years. For serious misdemeanors, it's 5 years. And then for one felony, it's 7 years. Or for one felony, it's 5 years, excuse me. And then for 2 felonies or more, then it is 7 years. And like I said previously, there are some mechanisms in place for automatic expungement. So that's 7 years for misdemeanors and 10 years for felonies. So a lot of people, for the reasons Noah said, it's really important to them and they want this done sooner rather than later. So it's great that the automatic mechanism is there, but we're seeing a lot of people that want to go ahead and move forward with it, even if it's a little bit more difficult or more trouble now. And in terms of when does the waiting period start? It's from the last event. So when I'm explaining it to people, what I say is the last activity of the case, basically. So whether that is the day the sentence was imposed or whether they completed probation, whether, when they were discharged from parole or prison, or completion of any term of their sentence. So the simplest way to say it is the very last contact or time the case was active at all. And a good thing to note is that if they are paying restitution, that does not interfere with the waiting period. So you don't have to have completely paid off restitution or fines or anything to be eligible for expungement.
All right, and I think now it's back to me for a little while. So there are some additional limits on what can be expunged. As Hannah already kind of talked about, no more than 3 felonies. But then there are also some other ones like no more than 2 assaultive convictions. And so we see that, I've seen that in quite a few people, that they might have three assault convictions. And those first 2 things, they operate very differently. So with no more than 3 felonies, what that means is if you have 4 or more felonies, you're not eligible to expunge any of them. But with the assaultive convictions, you are eligible to expunge up to 2. So if you have 7 assaultive convictions, now that might impact the judge's decision, because at the end of the day, it's up to the judge unless it qualifies for automatic expungement. But you can choose which 2 assaultive convictions you want to expunge if you have more than that. And then no more than 1 felony for the same offense if that offense is punishable by 10 or more years. And again, that's the same as what Hannah said. It's what the maximum punishment is, not what the received punishment is for that 10 plus years. And then there are a number of complicating factors that make this law difficult to interpret. So there's something called the 1 bad night rule. So the limit on felonies is 3. But there's this thing called the 1 bad night rule that says if you committed several crimes in a 24-hour period that are related, they could count as 1 conviction. So you might have 3 felonies in a night. If they qualify, they would only count as 1 felony. So you might have 2 unrelated felonies and then 3 felonies this one night. You still would qualify because the 3 on the one night count as 1 felony. And that's difficult because there are limitations. Those felonies can't be more than 10 years. They can't be assaultive. They can't involve a dangerous weapon, things like that. So in my experience so far, I don't know if Hannah has seen this differently. A lot of the time, multiple felonies don't qualify under that, or if somebody has that many felonies, I don't see it being that useful, but there are definitely times that it will come into play. Another complicating factor is driving while intoxicated, and that's only complicated because it was not part of the initial law that was passed. So the legislature passed it, but the governor didn't sign it the first time around. They tried again, and the governor did sign it, but that wasn't signed until I think it was September of this year, and it doesn't go into effect for 6 months. So it's not until February that you can expunge a driving while intoxicating or impaired, although it's just 1 first offense that can be expunged in someone's lifetime for that. And you can't expunge a first if you have a second or anything like that. And then Hannah kind of mentioned the conviction versus the charged offense. And I would say that I think the general feeling is that typically it's whatever you're convicted of that is important, and then what you need to look at. But again, this is something that the judge makes the final decision. So different judges might view that differently. And there are sometimes when, the limit on assaultive crimes where it's a little more, you might have to make an argument that, you were charged with assault, you pled to something that's not considered an assaultive crime. And, the statute, the good thing about the statute is it lists. So what is an assaultive crime? The statute actually lists every MCL number that is considered to be an assaultive crime. So you might have been charged with one and then pled to something different. And so one of the complicating factors kind of related to that is the law doesn't establish who has the burden of proof, I believe, in establishing what is considered an assaultive crime. So you might run into a situation where a prosecutor objects, and it's kind of a question that's left open. Whose burden is it to prove that this offense is assaultive or not assaultive? So that's just one one additional complication. And then with traffic offenses, I put that on there, Secretary of State, because, you know, there are lots of traffic offenses that are now expungible, but that has no impact on your driving record. So you could expunge it from your criminal record. It's not going to take it off your Secretary of State record. So it's complicating just in that people will expect that. People will expect that if it's expunged, it's gone, and it's not. And there's, as far as I know, there's no way to expunge something from a Secretary of State record. And then non-Michigan convictions. So expungement is a state-by-state law. You know, people will come with convictions in Michigan and in other states. And obviously you can't expunge anything out of state through a Michigan court. You would have to go to that state. But it can be difficult. And the law is great, but it's complicated. And it doesn't say whether a non-Michigan conviction during the waiting period counts. It probably does. I would say that if you've been convicted anywhere within that waiting period, it probably counts. But it's just one of those things that you have to factor. And then the different forms, that just means that there are 3 different forms for applying for expungement. There's the standard form, which is what you will use the most. Then there's a specific marijuana form, which I'll talk about more in just a second. And then there's a third form for victims of human trafficking. I have not seen that form used. I don't know, Hannah, have you had to use that at all? I think it's rare that you would have to use that. And it's more just to stress that, if you're looking for the form, make sure you get the right one. But the form is pretty simple. So we're not going to get into what the form looks like today. We'll talk about that when we're in person. And now, just to cover kind of the marijuana process, because it's a very different process than the standard process, and that's because it has a different purpose. So the marijuana purpose, the purpose is to allow people to expunge convictions for behavior that is currently legal. So if you have a possession charge from 5 years ago before the law changed, you have to file a form, and you generally won't have to go to court. There's not a hearing scheduled. There's only a hearing if the prosecutor objects, and the prosecutor can only object if they feel that the behavior that you are convicted of was actually something that's still illegal. And that's another place where it can get complicated, because quite often people will plead down to a possession charge that is a simple possession that is currently legal, but what they were charged with was trafficking, and trafficking is not legal still. So a prosecutor could object and say, yes, your conviction would be eligible, but that the behavior was not. And the law is written to state that it's the behavior, I believe, not the specific conviction. But that's the problem. One of the complicating factors too with it's just a new law, so we don't have appellate decisions about these kinds of things. We hope to have decisions from courts soon, because everybody has the same issues. No one is clear on some of these things. So hopefully it gets more clear as time goes by. Other differences with the marijuana process is that there is no waiting period. So so you don't have to. You can have other convictions that it doesn't impact that conviction. The waiting period for marijuana is just that it has to have been behavior prior to the law changed. So if you got convicted after marijuana became legal, obviously you were charged with something that's currently illegal, so it's not going to apply. So it's only for convictions. I think it's December of 2018 is when that law went into effect. But so that's just a different process, and you probably won't see those because we have to prioritize the cases that are going to have a bigger impact on someone's life, and that someone is going to have a harder time doing themselves. And I think we kind of feel that the misdemeanor process is so simple that we tend to not take those cases at legal aid. Will unless there's something else going on or something about a situation that we need to get involved, we can explain to clients, just this is what you have to do, and you can do it on your own. All right, and then now we're going to talk a little bit about the process for cases, and we're going to go back to Hannah.
All right, thank you, Noah. So just to talk a little bit about what it looks like in our office, how we get these cases and what we do with them. So we get cases from various different forms. We have an online form that people will fill out sometimes. Sometimes people will just call us, show up at our door, stop us in court. So a variety of ways that people find us. And we also we actually have a medical legal partnership with the Center for Better Health in downtown, in Benton Harbor. So we get, we've been seeing a lot of expungements there too. So once a client finds us, we determine whether they're eligible both for our services and whether their convictions are eligible for expungement. And we do have income guidelines regarding who we can and who we can't represent just based on our funding. So we'll ask those questions to screen them. If they're not eligible for our services, we sometimes will say, here's how here's a brief explanation of how you could do it yourself, or sometimes refer them to private attorneys. And the first step for expungements is we want to order their iChat, which we mentioned that briefly, and that's basically just the Michigan State report to see what's officially on their record. And a lot of times I've seen some cases where people think there are things on there that aren't. So for example, if the charge was dropped by the prosecutor, or with some cases, with some misdemeanors, if you complete your probation within a year, then it'll be removed from your record. So sometimes it's a good surprise and there are things that they thought should be on there that aren't. Sometimes they aren't quite sure about what the charge is, but getting that official report will show you what exactly is on there and what exactly needs to be expunged. And so once we get the iChat report and can confirm that, next they need to get a couple things, which I believe is on the next slide. So, and then just to briefly go through our process, in terms of placing the case, we have a weekly case review in our office. And then we'll determine whether it meets our priorities, whether we have the capacity to take it on, and whether we want to place it with a staff attorney in our office, or if it's a good case for a pro bono attorney. Okay, so to go over a little bit of kind of our thoughts for how to work with all of you guys to get cases your way. If some pro bono attorneys like to do a conflict check or have their own retainer agreement, if that's something you would like to do, just let us know and we can talk about it. If not, if you're just fine with us giving you a client, we will give you all of the documents that you need, which we'll talk a little bit about on the next slide, I believe. And once you have all the documents and are able to draft the application, next you'll meet with the client, have them sign it, and then you'll file the application at the courthouse. And then several months later, you'll have a court date where you appear with the client. Right now, those are all happening over Zoom. I could see that being for the foreseeable future, continuing to happen over Zoom. And then hopefully after the hearing, you'll celebrate a win. And then we have a case closure form for you to send to us once the case is over. Okay, and so to get into it a little bit more of what it looks like. So I discussed the iChat as just a good way to, know from the outset exactly what needs to happen and confirm what's on their record and their eligibility. So next, the couple of things we need, the application to set aside conviction. That's the actual form that we can go over more at the next training. They also will have to go and get their fingerprints taken at a police station, and that's needed because the Michigan State Police has to pull a national background check as part of the application process. They'll also have to get certified copies of their conviction from the courthouse, and they also have to get a $50 check to the Michigan State Police. So I believe, at least in the beginning, we're going to get all of those documents for you so that it's all good to go. And then we can play it by ear moving forward. as people get more comfortable with it, and if maybe they're comfortable taking the case on it a little bit earlier in the process. So when you file the application with the courthouse, that's just the application to set aside conviction form along with the certified record of their conviction. And then you'll get that back from the courthouse with a court date. And then you send the filed copy out to the Michigan State Police. And you also include the fingerprints and the check in that copy you send to them. You send another copy to the Attorney General. And then you send a third copy to the prosecuting official. And then the application has a little certificate of mailing. And so you can just sign that on the day you distribute it out to the places it needs to go and file that again with court. So they have that. And I do have templates for all of those letters to send out that I'm sure we'll provide to you as well. Okay, so just a couple notes on things we're seeing in Berrien County specifically. Since it is a trial court system, misdemeanors and felonies are all in the same court, so you don't have to have a separate form for felonies versus misdemeanors, so that's a positive thing. And all applications are filed in the same court, or all the ones that you'll be working on anyway. There is a court down in Niles. We don't see very many of those, and we'll probably handle those as instead of having those be pro bono cases, but just a side note. There is no online record search in Berrien County. There used to be, but they discontinued it about a year ago for some reason. And we'll see if it ever comes back, but there's no way to online do a record search. So we really have to rely on the iChat and the certified copies of the convictions that people get for us. So right now, because of the huge influx of cases, there's a huge backlog in the court, and they are actually only doing expungement hearings one morning per month at the moment. Of the approximately 7 or 8 expungement cases I've had since April, I've only been able to actually do one because they keep rescheduling them, because if another issue comes up on a criminal case, they're kind of having that take priority and then moving back any expungement cases that were scheduled for that day. So it's unfortunate, but we are working with them. In the Michigan State Police and Attorney General's office, they both have a huge backlog as well. So it's kind of an issue that's compounding, but we're working on that and hopefully can resolve that soon. And something I've been seeing a lot is I'll get a letter the day before the hearing that says it's rescheduled. A couple of times I haven't even gotten the letter that day. So moving forward, we think it's a good idea to call the court about 2 days in advance. So that way you don't show up on Zoom with your client just to be told, sorry, come back in a couple months. And that's also something that I've just made it a point to really reiterate with clients so that they can expect, to manage their expectations and so that they understand, it might be a pretty long time before we actually get the court date. And that's just how things are going right now. The good news is I have seen that judges here have been really receptive to expungement. Here it's criminal judges that are also handling the expungement cases, and I don't think they get to tell people good news or see people on a good day very often. And so I think they really enjoy being able to do this, and they seem to really, understand the positive impact it can have on people. And so they do seem very receptive to granting them if you can actually get in front of them and get scheduled in their limited time.
All right. Well, that is the end of most of the presentation. There's just 2 slides left. One is I have some questions for you folks, but first let's open it up if you have any questions for us about anything we talked about. And just unmute and ask away.
No, one question I know I had in the first training I did for this was trying to keep track of this type of offense, but not this. There are checklists, and I know you mentioned you were going to send materials out, but can you just tell us a little bit about the sort of things that will be available to us to make sure as we're going through someone's conviction history that we can try to keep track of all of those ins and outs?
Yeah. There are a variety of resources, and that's probably one of the things I should have put on the presentation. We have a resource page on our website If you go to our website, which is lawestmi.org, that stands for Legal Aid West Michigan. And then there's a pro bono resources page that has a bunch of different areas, and then one of the areas is expungement, and it is password protected. The password is pro bono, so it's not too difficult. And then right now, it's not everything that we're going to put on there is available. We're going to add a lot to that, but there's some different presentations and checklists and things like that, and we're going to keep adding. Yeah, there are a variety of different resources. I still want to create just something that's a little easier, but it's so complicated, it's hard to distill it down into simple terms. So the best I have is just a one-page checklist that lists the different statutes that are considered assaultive and what's considered a serious misdemeanor versus a non-serious, and things like that. But I will, after this is over, I'll send the presentation out with links to that page, and also just some of the checklists. I'll attach it to that email. And if there's something that you feel is missing, I mean, my job is creating those things, so I'm always happy to create more guides or checklists or whatever you think would be helpful.
Yeah, and just to add, we'll be reviewing these before we send them to you. As you can see, since it is kind of complicated, it's always helpful for you to look over it again and kind of confirm that. But so it will have gone through us first too.
Noah, can you clarify the roles for attorneys and non-attorneys, and can non-attorneys do everything that you just described, or do you have to be an attorney for certain parts of this, the steps in this process?
So non-attorney could, if they know the law, they can review, make initial determinations of eligibility. So non-attorneys can review iChats and do all that, collect the paperwork, and all that kind of thing. And filling out the paperwork, as long as someone is supervised by an attorney, I think completing the applications is fine. And talking to the client and things like that, as long as there's some supervision by a licensed attorney. And then going to court, I mean, standing up and representing the client, obviously that has to be an attorney. But I think there's a lot of the process that non-attorneys could help with. I don't know, Charles, I'm going to put you on the spot if you're listening as our resident expungement paralegal. I mean, Charles does a huge amount of work with this, and he's a paralegal. So, collecting the paperwork, meeting with clients, talking to clients, filling out the applications, reviewing for eligibility. Are there any other parts of the process that I didn't mention, Charles, that you do?
Yeah, I mean, that is, I think, the majority of it, as Noah describes. I think it probably depends how you generally use paralegals within your organization. I think, for the most part, they can continue to serve that function, short of actually making the appearance in court. But I think we could also probably be intentional about designing this to fit the staffing opportunities that we have. So something to think on.
Any other questions? All right. And so I guess the next is kind of some questions for you. And one of the things I don't think I really explained, and I don't know, maybe Katie, you guys have already explained this. So typically, our typical pro bono process is we have a case and we assign it to a specific attorney. And just to plug our general pro bono opportunities. If you ever want to get involved beyond expungement, just let me know. You can always take other kinds of cases. We're always looking for more people to do family law, consumer law, things like that. So if you have any interest, just let me know. I won't go beyond that. But what we've decided to do with Whirlpool is that it's going to be more of a project team. So when we have cases, we're going to send them directly to Katie and Emily, and then they will kind of coordinate with everyone for who has time to do different parts of it. One of the difficulties with expungement right now, at least, and probably for the foreseeable future, is there's a lot of upfront work. You get the file, you have to file the application, meet with the client, do all that. Then there's a long lag time, and then there's a court date. And there's not really much you have to do in between. So it's, and it doesn't have to be the same person doing the two parts. Obviously, the benefit of a project team is, people that have time can work on the front end, and then whoever has time can cover the hearing, when it gets to that point. And so one of the things that we can do, and Hannah mentioned that she has a lot of cases currently in process, and she has graciously offered to do a number of things. Everything from, if somebody is just raring to go and wants to go represent somebody right away, we can refer the case over to you and you can go to court with them. I'm guessing you're probably not quite ready for that, and I don't expect that. But if you want to just go to court with Hannah, and I'm saying go to court like you're actually showing up at the courthouse, as she said, these are all Zoom hearings right now. But she would be happy to have you just attend and watch some of these. So the last slide has all of our contact information. So I would just ask that you reach out to Hannah if you are interested in doing that, and she'll help coordinate that. And as we mentioned, the second part of the training is going to be in person, and we're going to have some actual files, and these are files that are ready to go. And I believe that we're going to have, that's going to be the handoff. Like, here you go. Now you take it from here. So we'll be able to actually walk through it and see what we've done to determine that they're eligible, and then what the next steps are. We can look through iChats, we can look at the forms. We can really, go through each file if you want. We're flexible. We want to do whatever provide whatever service you need to get you all comfortable to take these cases. So, we'd like to get started sooner rather than later. As Hannah said, we have a lot of cases. There were a couple events in last month. Lose track of time. One in Niles and one in Benton Harbor, just across the street from the Whirlpool office there in Benton Harbor. And we had, I think, about 100 people, intakes for about 100 people that all wanted expungements. Now, not all of them are eligible for our services. Not all of them are eligible for expungement. So I don't think we have 100 cases ready to go, but we probably have a good number. And so, the sooner we can get everyone up to speed, the better. I know when we originally talked about scheduling a date, Friday afternoons were mentioned as a good time. So that's, the first question is Friday afternoon still the best time for you all?
It's a great question, because our situation is actually changing on Monday. We're doing return to office, which is super exciting, but our core days in office will be Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. So the best chance to catch a bunch of people in the office is going to be on those days. So I don't know if you guys want to look at like Thursday, maybe your guys' Thursday afternoon schedule or something like that, and see if there are some dates that work, and then maybe we can go from there. But I do think both Emily and I felt like when we did the Kalamazoo expungement fair, there's sort of hearing about it, and then there's actually like sitting down with the files and going through it. And it would be great to be together with you guys and doing that, especially for the first time, able to ask questions. Although Noah, you have promised me that you will always be available for us to ask questions. But
Yes.
I think it would be great, sort of rubber meets the road, and doing a training that way. But Monday, Tuesday, and Thursdays will be the best chance to get folks in the office.
Okay. And are there any times and you said Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday?
Monday, Tuesday, Thursday.
Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. Okay. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. Okay. And are there any times within those core days that just there are standing meetings for everyone or anything like that? Or is it pretty, no?
No, it'll be
Everybody's
a little bit
got
of, picking a time and then hoping that it works for the most people. But yeah, if you want to send us some potential times that work for your team, we can eliminate anywhere we know there's a substantial number of people who will have a conflict.
Okay, great. I will do that. All right, and as I talked about the court date, so just let Hannah know if you're interested in attending any before the next time we get together. I'm sure there will be court dates after we get together as well. And then I think we kind of already talked about this. So right now we're starting with we're doing all the workup and judging eligibility, and then we'll give you cases that we think are ready to go. If you want to, as Hannah said, start earlier, down the road, that's fine. If you want to bring non-attorneys in to help with that part of it, we would gladly accept that. If you want to take more cases, I think we talked about, sending about 10 cases at the first, and then just kind of seeing how things go, and you can let us know when you want more. Does that sound good to everybody? Does anybody have any questions about any of that part of it? Great. Well, we're definitely excited to be working with you all. I think I hope that you've seen that we're easy people to work with and friendly, and we want to make this as easy as possible. So we're really looking forward to it, and looking forward to the next training and getting in a room and kind of talking through all this. It's a lot more interesting to have it in front of you than just talk through a PowerPoint.
No, we really appreciate it. I hope you can tell from everybody introducing themselves that we're really excited about this too. So excited to get it started.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Here's our contact information. As I said, I'll send this out in the slides as well, so you don't need to scribble it down or anything. But we very much appreciate everybody being here and everybody's willingness to help with this. It is great work, and it'll be extremely rewarding. And so we're excited to get it started. So with that, I'm going to stop recording, and everybody have a great weekend.